never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, back for another team preview in the preseason for NRL SuperCoach. And this week we have the reigning champion Brisbane Broncos. For that, extra special guests that we get in regularly on the Allstars podcast, former overall champion and also now former SuperCoach Champions podcast host and founder, Wilfred the Catfish Zee. Wilfred, welcome back, mate. It's been probably 6 months since the Allstars podcast last time, so glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back as always. I know we get together every year to chat Broncos and SuperCoach, and yeah, finally I got it right this time. up the mighty Broncos, eh?
Well, sort of. I mean, it's a fortuitous episode to be recording it now because you would have been coming in for several months on a high, winning the premiership in 2025 and everything, and I was ready for you to stick it to me, but now in the last 24 hours, your best player, Payne Haas, has decided to leave, so I'm not sure how happy you are.
Yeah, look, that was a bit of a surprise, honestly. I didn't really see that coming at all, as probably most Broncos fans didn't. At least we get one more year, so we can run it back. Look, maybe not a Panthers-style dynasty, but if we can go back-to-back, he can do whatever he wants.
Well, that's a very glass-half-full way to look at it. I haven't quite seen that from all the Broncos supporter base online, but, you know, there's a few in there being positive, so that's good. Wilfred, you are also, like I mentioned, SuperCoach champions. Been in a bit of a hiatus last season or so. Are you still in a hiatus this year, I take it? Just a bit too busy and life getting in the way?
Yeah, real life is definitely bending me over, so definitely probably one more year. If I do anything, it'll just be, random bits here and there. So apologies for those. I know there are some people who still message me, which I do take as a compliment. So I really do appreciate that. But yeah, look, you're probably going to get me on the All-Stars more than the Champions podcast this year. But look, I won't write off next year. I definitely, things may change. It's just a really important time of, I guess, my eldest is about to go into high school next year. So this year's always tough, finding the right high school, all that type of stuff. So yeah, really a lot of real life stuff getting in the way, but hey, can't complain. It's good busy, not a, drama filled busy life, I guess you could say.
That sounds great because look, we've got a scoop that's going to rival Pete Bedell there over in Queensland, where we've got Wilfred now just agreeing to upgrade his trainer trial deal to a full-time one with the All-Stars podcast. So he's in the top 30 now. It's done. We're going to see Wilfred through the year a few times, but we've got to talk Broncos now. And the Broncos obviously coming in off a high, right? They've just won the last premiership. They're defending premiers now to try and go back-to-back. Player movement-wise, now, I actually quite like Grant Anderson a fair bit. I think that he improved a lot last year. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said he's a sort of a fringe first grader. But now I actually think that he actually proved last year, he improved his game a lot, that he can be a first grader. Young Tom Duffy, decent depth there. Very highly touted front rower from the Dolphins. Tawa, have I pronounced that correctly?
That's how I would have tried to do it.
It's a few guys in there that could play some first grade potentially. But losses-wise, Fletcher Baker wasn't playing anyway. Selwyn Cobbo was in and out. But I guess Cobbo and Hetherington are probably the big two that were playing quite a bit that are going to leave some holes. And then you've also got Smoothie as well was in and off that bench. Jock Madden occasionally for depth. So I guess depth-wise, you've lost a bit because, obviously Madden can be in the halves and Kobe Black's a half as well. So potentially lost a bit, but Tom Duffy's come in. So I guess you'd probably say, look, overall, I don't think that you'd say that you've gone down in quality particularly, but you're pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think top 17-wise, obviously Cobbo was in and out. At his best, he's definitely in the top 17, but, he wasn't always at his best. I think we saw that. And Kobe Hetherington, look, his ceiling was always capped, but he had a role and he did pretty well. I definitely have to say, some games last year, he did make a difference off the bench and stuff like that. So that will be a little bit of a hole that we need to fill. I'm hoping that's filled by, existing players who are going to step up. I'm sure we might talk about a couple of them later that might have some Supercoach relevance. But yeah, look, I think as far as a premiership winning squad to only have this amount of movement, I think Broncos should be pretty happy with that, all things considered.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. And as far as how they go this year, I'm going to go for quite a big range. And I've done this the last couple of teams, actually. So, like, I do try and do like a bit of a better range. But, like I've said on every podcast, Wilfred, the competition is tighter than ever. So, there's so many possibilities, I think, for a lot of teams. For the Broncos, my range for them is 3 to 10. And some Broncos fans will go glass half empty, crazy style on me on social media now because and they'll go, "Well, how can they finish 10th?" I've also said top 4 guys and girls, okay? So just tone it down a little bit. I could easily see them, top 4 be a contender again. A couple of little concerns though. One, you kind of alluded to it. Middle forward wise, that pack has always been held up completely by Carrigan and Haas. Either of them go down, the pack is looking very average. The younger guys haven't really stepped up yet. They could, and that's going to help immensely and help them be a top 4 side. But they're going to need some of those guys now in that pack to step up. And I'm looking at guys that are almost going to be journeymen soon, like Jordan Ricky, who just cannot reach their potential. And also guys who are young, who it's time and they need to do it now. And that's guys like Piakura, Willison, who we've seen glimpses of being a great player off the bench for you guys. But all in all, a lot of pressure on the forward pack. 2 other big points for me. The second one is it's a lot of pressure on guys that had career years. And it's guys that are stars that can replicate it a lot easier, like a Reece Walsh. But it is also journeymen as well, who are a lot hard to replicate. Sometimes it's a flash in the pan season for guys like Shibasaki, who had a great year, deserves all the credit in the world. But it would be very easily for him to drop off 50% because he just stepped up so immensely. It was insane last year, one of those fairy tale seasons. There's a couple of guys like that, and we'll get to them when we talk about them as well. And the final thing is, Madge Maguire, it's all the great things that he does, unfortunately also gives way to the holes in his coaching. And that is he generally, he starts off on fire, right? Like he brought Souths to a grand final and that quickly eroded. And his style of coaching is very much getting guys up and starting with that mentality and really instilling the motivation and confidence into a team. But that starts to wear off after a while and it only goes for so long. And he's not exactly a big X's and O's coach, as we've seen. That's not a knock on Madge, it's just a style that he is. It's why he's effective in certain types of roles and certain types of teams, and why the Broncos got to the grand final last year. I think if you had an X's and O's coach purely, I don't think you would have done it. That team needed to come together. It needed the confidence and it needed the discipline that Madge instilled. But longer term, what does that look like? And that can mean as much as this season. So I've said all the bad things, but I mean, at the end of the day, all those career year guys, maybe Shibasaki is this guy now. Maybe he is a great Australian centre and maybe, Reece Walsh, Payne Haas, Carrigan, they can all replicate these fantastic seasons that they had. And you're a contender again and you could be in the grand final. So I just think that there is a few things there that I'm just not sure what will happen.
Yeah, look, I think you've been pretty fair on the whole. I definitely can appreciate quite a few points there. On the forward pack, I'll push back a little. I really do think Willison stepped up a fair bit last year. Not taking over, to elevate his game to that Haas and Carrigan level, but how many players could do that, right? But I think Willison could be on par with, he's definitely a first grade quality prop. Whether he's a genuine starting prop or not, like maybe that's still, but he's definitely like, I would be surprised if Willison's not making a top 17 in most of the NRL squads this as a prop or a bit like a bench forward.
I love Willison. I really like him.
I really think he's got a lot of, he's obviously big and fast and strong and still growing. And I definitely think he's got some qualities that, like I said, he's not going to replace Payne Haas, but if he or Carrigan go down, but definitely Willison I think he's going to get better again this year. Not for SuperCoach necessarily, but I love watching his development just as a footy player. I think with the Broncos, what we saw it so much of their game style is they're just exciting, right? There's so much talent, so much excitement in the back line. Reece Walsh kind of in many ways, just represents what the Broncos is like. When he's hot, he's absolutely red hot. When he's off his game, it can look pretty bad. And we saw that even last year, a premiership winning squad. There was games towards the back end where they lost 40-18 against a team you just don't expect them to lose to. And then the next week they've come out and they're back on and they're just blitzing quality, top 4 teams and putting them away. So one thing I do think the Broncos did really well is they obviously, and this is probably a Madge thing, they were probably the fittest, if not like one of the top 2 or 3 fittest teams. And you don't make those comebacks if you're not just fitter than the other team. Like, it's exciting, but the reason they were able to be so effective in the back half of games is they were just fitter and they could keep going. And, when you have so much explosive attack, when you keep throwing them at tiring defenders, like, it's going to open up. So if they're still at that level of fitness, and it's hard to stay there, right? Especially when injuries start piling up. Like, I don't think the Broncos had a dream injury run, because even like Walsh got hurt and, Haas had his up and downs and there was quite a few players who were in and out. I do think, if they can say somewhat similar levels of injury and suspension and maintain that fitness, I still think they're going to be dangerous. Yeah. I do think, the way they play it is very high risk, high reward. So you're absolutely, I'd probably wouldn't put them at, I still think they're too good to be outside the top 8, genuinely. But I don't see them being consistent enough across the whole season to be, one of the teams that I just think are going to be top 1 or 2. So I think 3rd to maybe 6 is probably my range. I still think that is, that's pretty optimistic, and it still relies on a number of things going well. But like, I feel like that to me is what I would expect from them this year. And I would be hoping that they can make another genuine push towards, at least a prelim, if not, going back to back.
Of course.
I think a lot of it will, last point, a lot of it is going to hang on Ezra Mam, believe, he has to step up, because obviously he missed a chunk of last year. And I do think he needs to be a player who will start to take over more. It can't just be on Walsh. Like, I know Mam did his role last year, especially when Walsh was just running hot. But, as Adam Reynolds potentially slows down, I mean, it's going to be his last year and all that. And he's already slowing down, right? But Reynolds still had some really good games last year, and we need Mam to be doing that. Reynolds can just take more of a backseat and really do what he's required to do, which is game manage and absolutely just show off that awesome kicking game he's got. But he doesn't need to be taking over games. You should have Walsh and Mam, guys like that, to take the responsibility off him in that sense.
Yeah, you just touched on a point that I meant to make in my initial assessment, and that was the age is a big unknown too with those veterans. Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt are really quite old now, and they haven't we've seen it before with better players and them drop off a cliff. Like, Thurston's one of the great halves we've ever seen, and we saw it with him his last 2 seasons at Cowboys. That drop off is real. And Reynolds obviously got hurt last year, had some injury issues, and that's going to continue potentially. And Ben Hunt, as well, has been pretty lucky on the injury front in his career, but he's pretty old as well. So a lot hinges on the health and the age and how they handle this season of those older guys too, because that does put a lot of pressure on Mam, as you said. And I feel like I neglected Jesse Arthur's a great man. Talk about career seasons. He's another one. Like, the wingers for the Broncos basically had these career seasons as well, which you wouldn't really expect.
I do think Arthur's was probably better the year before. I mean, he lost his spot last year, so...
Oh, he did. You can throw Mariner in there as well. Mariner played probably better than what we've seen him before. But look, you're absolutely right with a couple of things there. Like, I give massive credit to Madge, because I don't remember in recent memory a Bronco side that was fitter, more disciplined, and had more mental fortitude, which was a big deal as well, the mental strength that they showed. We wouldn't have seen that from some of the Kevin Walters coach Bronco side some of those years. But it also plays into the opposite of it too, of me being critical, because the Broncos haven't been particularly consistent either. So they've had years, in the last 5 or 6 years, they've had some really good years, and obviously going and getting a premiership last year, and being in a grand final against the Panthers that they lost. But then they've also had other years where they haven't made the 8, and the side isn't hugely dissimilar to those years. So it's a bit hard, if people will think that I'm being a bit tough on them, but I just don't know. And I could see them going great. And I can also see them being underwhelming, because, like you said, they still, even last year when they win it all, they weren't particularly consistent. They went on a red hot run in the final 2 months of the season and carried that over, which is great. But it's not like a Melbourne Storm dynasty where they've been consistent year after year and they're just this powerhouse now, or Penrith for that matter. They're sort of still making a name for themselves as being a legitimate longer-term contender instead of a short-term one. They can do it. And if you got Reece Walsh in your side, you got Payne Haas in your side this year, those sort of teams can do anything. Let's have a look at the draw quickly before we talk about players. And with the draw, I was really torn on it, Wilfred, I have to say. And it really annoys me as a draw because it was like, just be a little bit easier to start with, and then I'd be all over Broncos. They start, I will say though, like each year you have to come on and defend how easy the Broncos draw is to start, and you're going to have to do it again. And I don't know how long you can keep going, how many years, but only once in the first 6 weeks do you leave the state of Queensland. So there is that. First 2 games, Penrith and Parramatta at home. Not particularly easy matchups. The Eels have a good historical record against the Broncos as well. And then away at Amy Park versus the Storm. So that first 3 weeks in particular, I think is pretty tough. Back at home at Suncorp, except it's at home against the Dolphins, who are also at home at Suncorp. And then it gets really nice, where you go, we've got the Gold Coast Titans away, but it's just down the road on the highway. And then you got the Cowboys at home at Suncorp. And then you got the Tigers away. That 3 weeks, all 3 of those sides might be non-top 8 sides. All 3 of those sides, as much as they might improve and surprise us, can still give up a lot of SuperCoach points. So after the Tigers game, they then go into 2 harder ones, Bulldogs at home, Roosters away. It's going to mean that they play those second 2 big bye rounds, which is handy. But missing that first one's a bit annoying, but you can get over that. I guess it's a bit of a tale of the first month being a bit tough and then opening up, and how much you want to start with guys and weather that first month versus how much you want to just target getting them in at sort of that round 5 mark against the Gold Coast Titans. But I guess the argument, Wilfred, is if you're talking forwards, the draw doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah, I guess it comes back to, and I'm sure you probably have discussed this at length already with the unexpected change of stats provided and all that type of stuff.
We have not actually. You're the first guest on since we've done it. So, this is just opening up that discussion and that can.
We might as well get into it. I think given the expectation, right, that all attacking stat players generally, except for maybe centers who pick up some more tries, generally speaking, I think it seems pretty universally accepted. Fullbacks are going to take a bit of a hit. Halfbacks as well. A lot of it will, the points will probably shuffle towards the forwards. We still don't know. Obviously, it will depend on how they do this whole runs versus hit-ups calculation and stuff like that. So I'm sure we're all waiting to get more information from SuperCoach about that. But I do wonder if, guys like Walsh and, a lot of the attacking players from the Broncos are just going to be quite overpriced because, the expectation that they're going to not just perhaps revert to the mean, because I think it's understandable the amount of attack they got last year to start off that hot, especially with the first 3 rounds being quite tough defensively. I think, there's an argument to suggest that even when they come to that easier run from, say, rounds, I'd throw the Dolphins in there as probably even an easier. I think they're a better team. They score heaps of points as well, though. So round 4 could just be an absolute shootout because I don't think the Dolphins defend that well. So there could be this run from rounds 4 to 7 onwards where they could be scoring lots of points, but maybe you could use that money that you might have spent on Walsh on another premium forward who's going to get you from rounds 1 to 7 the same amount of points, if that makes sense. That's one way I'm looking at it. I have to be honest, I haven't quite figured it out in my head how I want to approach it. I think a lot of people are just going, let's stack the pack, forget the backs, right? I don't think SuperCoach is always ever going to allow that because of the amount of points you could get for scoring tries and setting up tries and stuff like that. But it does seem like there's going to be a correction of sorts, and it's hard to pay that much money knowing that you're going to potentially lose a straight up 10 points per game, potentially, if not more, because of that tough draw to start with for someone like a Walsh or another attacking player like that.
Yeah, the draw definitely comes into it when you're looking at the start for those type of attacking guys, because I don't think there'll be a huge amount of points that first 3 weeks. So I'm definitely considering that. To touch on the points change, I'm going to actually say, I don't think it's controversial, but I think that everyone has gone a little bit too crazy on the amount of change that the change to the NRL stats is going to actually have. And I also say that because I think it's really important when we're looking at sides like the Broncos, but also other teams, that you're not just looking at one stats difference. So I've seen a lot of things gone around. It's really great info that everyone's sharing, and the content creators done a great job of doing some great graphics and things that I'm not good at doing. So shout out to them. But it is just one portion of the story. So when you look at try assists, if you've got like Nathan Cleary going down 5 points a game, for example, in try assists, you also have to consider what the net outcome is at the end. And the net outcome is that he's a little cheeky halfback that goes in and puts his hand third man in many times, and that's going to equate to more tackles now. Okay, so, and then with the running, you've also got the running now where it is, and this is my understanding right now, if SuperCoach decide to change what the stats are on the rules, then, all bets are off on what I've said. But as the stats stand, it is still the same points. It's 2 points for a run 8 meters plus, 1 point for a run under 8 meters. Just the criteria of what a run is changes a little. So at the moment, it's when you engage the line, which is going to give more runs basically. So someone like Nathan Cleary, for example, could easily get 5 extra tackles a game and could easily get an extra 7 runs a game because he's engaging the line and then passing the ball. It might even be a lot greater than that. I'm just speculating examples. So someone like Cleary, who everyone looked at sort of the assists and went, oh, he's going to lose out, or Hines, they might actually net end up better off. So I've said this to a few people that have asked me advice on it. If you've got a plan to get a great attacking fullback or a great attacking halfback because you think they're going to start on fire and you think they're going to give you elite points of 80s or 90s as an average, don't throw that out the window just because you might lose 2 or 3 points a game overall, because I think that that's a little bit short-sighted. You already believed in them. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't make any difference, Wilfred, because I think the hookers and the locks that go to the line, those sort of guys are going to increase in value quite a bit because they're not going to lose value elsewhere in the new scoring. So someone like a Carrigan that can go to the line and pass, before the line wouldn't have got a hit up before, but he will get a run now. And Carrigan has a bit of Nathan Hindmarsh about him too, where he does like to flop in as the third man quite a bit. So I actually think that overall, the point scoring won't be much different. You're just going to have outliers on either side, as you always do. A few guys that are going to end up a lot better off, and a few guys are going to end up a lot worse off. But for the most part, I sort of think it'll be pretty similar.
That's a very measured take. I guess it really comes down to the interpretation of it, right? Because I do think there's a potential that, because I'm pretty sure NRL still track hit-ups. So I know in their stats, like when you look on the website, they have an all runs thing, which is where you're talking about where it counts hit-ups as well as any time that engage the line before they pass or whatever. Whereas I do think they do keep, like, we might not see them all the time, but they definitely have a hit-ups column. They usually only display it for forwards, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd have to double check this because I don't always stare at the NRL stats on their game day stats. But yeah, it will depend. Like if they have those and it's still NRL stats provider that keeps those, if that ends up being the thing they adopt for SuperCoach, then it may not change a whole heap in terms of run numbers. If they go with when they have line engagement, then if anything, like someone like Cleary could end up being absolutely undervalued because he does engage the line so much. I think actually Adam Reynolds was, if not first or second, in line engagements last year or the year before. It's insane how many times he did it, which he got 0 points for SuperCoach, but it could make a huge difference for, So I think, rather than overreacting, for me, I'm just kind of like, well, let's just wait until SuperCoach come up and clarify that. I do think they will need to come out and say something to clarify the adjustments and what the stats mean and all that type of stuff. So I guess, watch the official channels for more information about that, and then we could probably draw some more conclusions. But yeah, coming back to the draw, like I do agree, like that first 3 weeks could be a little bit tougher, but it's hard. Like 3 weeks is awkward, right? Because at that point you haven't gained or lost enough cash to then be able to move to get a Walsh in. Like you could plan for, maybe there's a fairly expensive fullback who could still be good for the first 3 weeks, and then you swap to Walsh with a minimum of a change, but that's still risky, right? It's going to be factoring a trade that you're going to make in round 4 when you're really hoping to consolidate, cheapies and underperforming guns and swapping those around rather than trying to take advantage of matchups. So it's a tough call. Like you said, you could just, grin and bear it, suck it up for the first 3 weeks and just count on rounds 4 to 7 to make up for the lost points there. But
it's very awkward because, like, if you get to like round 4 and you go, I want them from round 4 for the Dolphins, like, Reece Walsh might have a 200 break even, and you're like, oh, cool, I was right, but I'm going to buy him at that anyway. So,
That's right.
like, it makes no difference. You may as well just start with him. And you're right with the trades, because it's so important at the start to fix your team up with your trades, and I often say use your boosts at the start so you can fix your team up straight away, because none of us are going to nail it. There's going to be mistakes that you make, and guys are going to go down injured as well. So that's hard. And just back to finish off on the stats as well, I've also seen a lot of misconception about this as well, where people are like, oh, the NRL doesn't have this stat, or there isn't this. I can unequivocally tell you, and this is from work that I've done with the NRL as well, they have a mountain of stats, like ridiculous amount. Pretty much any stat you could think of, the NRL has, because they supply that to their business partners and to the clubs. And, those aren't consumer stats. They're not stats for us. We get all the basic stuff that they think a consumer needs of the game, a fan needs of the game, and they've got everything else. They're a large organisation. They have all the stats that they could want. So don't think that they can't do the hit-ups 8 metres plus. They certainly can. But they have changed the rules on SuperCoach where it's saying runs now, not hit-ups. So it is different, and they have changed that in there for a reason. So I'm going to assume that reason is that we're going to get more runs, but we'll wait for clarification on that. Let's talk about the players, because I think that this is going to be the part that is very, very interesting for everyone. The first cab off the rank when we're talking about guns, Wilfred, is going to be Payne Haas, of course, because he is the best player at the Broncos, but also one of the best players in the game. 852,700 is an astonishing amount to pay for a front rower. But when you look at the numbers, you just go, by God, how can I not do it? Like, the only knock on starting with Haas is that you can say that he had a career year and he's actually going to regress a bit, because it was his best season that he's had. And it was just a remarkable season, though. Like, he had 80 base power, which is ridiculous. You're getting 80 plus from him, basically just from him doing his normal work rate. His offloads and tackle breaks were off the charts. He's offloaded a lot more in the last couple of years than normal. Ended up with 4 tons. The 2 seasons before, he combined for 1 ton. Between 2024 and 2023 seasons, 1 ton. He had not scored 3 or more tries since 2019, which was his first full year of first grade, where he scored 4 tries, and he got 3 last season. So, I mean, look, and you look at his base even, like his raw base was 56. The year before it was 49. Like, it's crazy off the charts and numbers that Payne Haas put up. Now, you can obviously say, Wilfred, that just means he's just such an elite player that you just get him. And that's a totally fine argument, and I currently have him, even though I didn't initially when Picker came out. But the other argument as well is that you look at it and go, I think that he's going to regress a little bit. And when you look at the years before, it's hard to remember him being a 68 average, but it was only in 2024. So, like, he averaged 87 points a game, but in 2024 it was only 68. The year before that it was 74, and then 63 and 68. He's actually been nowhere near this. So I've started him just because of how good he was last year. But God, when I looked at the last 5 years, Wilfred, it started to scare me immensely from starting him.
Yeah, look, it's a fair thing. The only thing I will throw in really quickly, that 68 was like there's an 11-minute game in there. So you take that out, he's already bumped back to 72. So I do think, even at his worst, he's still going to be a safe 70, 75. That's my thought. He's obviously got an offload now. Like, that's definitely something he's developed over time. And the thing that I really like is that his minutes didn't actually go up significantly, right? He's consistently now averaging around that 60 to 62 minutes a game. There are some where he goes up, obviously, but there's some low ones too. But he's floating around there like it's part of the rotation. I don't think his minutes are going to change. If anything, this is obviously just thinking about the fact that he's gone next year. Why isn't Madge going to flog the heck out of him this year?
Said this as well, yeah.
So to me, I just think like the Broncos are going to get every inch out of, squeeze every little bit of Payne Haas goodness out of him before they send him to the Rabbitohs. So he was pretty much first picked. So there's also the potential that even just with the stats change, all of that type of stuff, he's going to naturally go up. His base and power could actually go higher than what it actually is, which is insane, obviously. Yeah, first picked.
If you've got a Ferrari that's getting repossessed, you hound the hell out of it to the point that the day that it gets handed back, you can barely drive it out of your driveway. So I do not understand anyone going easy on Payne Haas this year, minutes-wise or anything, which is great for start with, because sometimes starting with, there's that whole getting the minutes into the big fellas and sort of building it up. Tarpany's a great example at the Raiders of that happening. Payne's minutes should be just brilliant from the start. So I'm all for that. We also do have the stats upside. He could get some extra tackles. Probably not really any extra runs because they're all hit-ups anyway, but certainly, yeah, some extra tackles could be in there as well on his average. So he does actually project to be a 90-plus guy if he did the same thing but had a few extra tackles in there that he'll get credited for. So it's really interesting. It is. You say he could still average 70, and that's easily, and that's fair. But the problem is that if you average like 72, it's still 15 points under value. I could live with an 80 plus. Like, to me, if I'm starting with him, I want him 80 plus because I'm paying for elite numbers, which to me is in the 80s. And if he's 7 points, overpriced, that's fine to me. I'll pay for that. But if I get 70 or 72, that's a big whack on your salary cap for round one. So there is two arguments, I think. I've got him at the moment. I'm too scared not to. But, the teams that have got Payne Haas and May in them as the starting front rowers, that's a lot of cap there held up in front row. So I do think it does depend on your other makeup of your pack and stuff too.
Yeah, but I think the one thing we can throw out in there is that he's a genuine captaincy option over the opening rounds as well. So that's, I guess you can't really put a price tag on that. Like, you can only have so many guys that are going to be that expensive. If he's going to be that expensive, you need to have him in the conversation of captaincy, but he definitely is to me.
He's played 20-plus games every year, aside from 2024. So, he's been pretty consistent and a bit of an iron workhorse as well. So that's important. Yeah, do you think that I think that he goes all out now that he's got his last year of the Broncos. Like, I think he goes all out. Do you think that it affects him at all in a negative way that he's now into his last season and leaving for South?
I don't think so, right? Even when the Broncos were absolute rubbish, he was still out there busting his gut. So why would he not? Like, as much as he's leaving the club, whatever, I genuinely believe he loves the club and he's going to do everything he can. Like, I can 100%, he hasn't said it or anything, but I'd be shocked if he's not locked in going, we're going back to back and I will do my utmost to drag the Broncos to the title again. So yeah, I absolutely think he's going to, he won't hold back.
Big option. I'll say the thing that scared me into making sure that I owned him is that he went 140 early in the season last year, and that was a killer not to have him for. So I'm not going to make the same mistake this year when he could be running to the ground minutes-wise. Reece Walsh, 835,600. 85 average. Another one of those career bests, Wilfred. But to be fair to Reece, the 2 years before he went 75 and 80. So he has been, consistently high elite fullback for 3 years now. And last year obviously being the best at 85. There is a decent argument to start with him for sure. Obviously we know the fullback stocks, there's a lot of guys in there. We know that some guys will lose some assists, but the couple of things that worry me with him, not just the price tag, but the fact that he also took over goal kicking at times. So that last month of the season, just in that last 4 games, he had 28 points, 12 points, 20 points and 28 points just in goal kicking points. That's not going to be there while Adam Reynolds is back and healthy now. And so much of his average hinges on that magical run. It was almost one of those runs that you talk about, like a Jared Hayne 09 run, like a Ben Barber run, where round 22 onwards, out of 6 games, he went ton 5 times. And that is crazy. And 3 of the 6 were 140 plus games, which is ridiculous. So you look at that and go, wow, the end of that season was electric. But unfortunately, you got to look the opposite of that of, the start of the season was not. And start of the season, round 1 to 9, he averaged 57 points. Now, granted, it was only 7 games, but that's a decent enough sample size where he's not goal kicking. He actually goal kicked for some of it a little bit, but 7 games at that type of average in the 50s, that's what you could get from Walsh. So when you've got such a variance, right, you've got a guy that can average 90s or a guy that could average 50s, and he's priced at that high price point at 85 average. I find it really hard because guys that you pay up for, like a Tedesco, are generally pretty consistent. And even when they fall flat, they're still going to give you that 65 or 70, whereas Walsh in the past has not been able to do that. He's obviously had the low-scoring games. But then to finish off, people are going to rightly say Barnesy. He's come into his own. He's young. He's now hit his prime. He's got a premiership. He's hungry. He's improved his game. And what we saw in the second half of last year is superstar Reece Walsh coming to fruition. And I could not knock you for that.
I think we can all probably agree, like, whatever he did in the back end of the year just isn't going to ever be sustainable, right? That run of form was otherworldly, as you say, shades of Jared Hayne 2009 type stuff. I think realistically, though, he is developing more consistency. I think part of that is that he's learning when to throw the pass and stuff like that, right? The last few years, he was always throwing that last pass where, it was either an error because he's, the pass has gone on the ground, or he's thrown it over the sideline or whatever, or he's, thrown it forward, or it's a try assist, line break assist because it's put someone away. Those fell into place more often this year. Like, how many times did he just throw the ball out the back because he saw something? The ball landed in the right spot. Staggs picks it up and he just runs 80 meters down the right side, right? Like, it happened at least 4 or 5 times, just even off the top of my head.
I'll tell you something else with that too, though. Like, he also has developed I've been really impressed with him mentally, because you see him in other games in past years get frustrated and those things not come off, and he goes into his shell, almost looks a bit scared or worried, and he goes off the rails. That didn't happen last year. He was really good at that, where when those mistakes would happen or things wouldn't come off, it didn't buck his confidence. He just kept coming.
I think that's probably a coaching thing, right? Like, Madge has managed to help him mindset wise, and I definitely saw a shift. Like, maybe it's just general maturing. Like, he's getting older. Like, we forget how young he actually was, right? The first few seasons he was playing footy. So a lot of this is probably natural growth and development. That said, like, what he did at the back end is just unsustainable. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he drops, 100,000, 150,000 early on, because it's just, he's going to play well, but it's not going to match what he did at the back end. Plus, he's got the tough couple of matchups first up. Like, it's just scary, right? Because he was able to do that. And when you look at the numbers of what he did in the actual final series, where we don't have those numbers for SuperCoach, but he was doing it against top 8 teams,
yes,
and still going 100 plus consistently. Like, the guy was just untouchable. He's probably not going to start.
He was turning up so easily. It was crazy how easy it was.
Even against the Storm in the grand final, right? That bloody try he scored, that was probably 45 points just right there in that one play.
And would you have seen Walsh run like that type of line and so hard? Like, he ran like he thought he was 150 kilos and 6'8". He did not care. Yeah. You would not have seen that in prior years.
Absolutely. And I guess the flip side to that, if he keeps doing that across the season, he's going to hurt himself too, which is, he did miss some games. He did miss some games. Like, he's not built to take that much damage. So I think he's got to find a bit of a middle ground, obviously at the back end of the year when the games are more important, when obviously it's grand final, or when you're 18 points down and you've only got 15 minutes left, you're going to do that. So I just think if the Broncos are going to be a better team first half of the year, I kind of think he's still going to be good, but I would expect him realistically, he's going to start off a little bit slower on the whole. So, I mean, it's hard, right? I know some super coaches will want to start with him. You start with the new hotness, and then you downgrade if he's not living up to it. Yes. And it's easier to downgrade. So that could easily be a justification there. But like we talked about, the draw is awkward enough that you don't want to downgrade him just when he goes into the round 4 plus, round 4 to 7 run, which is just absolute gold. So yeah, I think if you start with him, you're just going to grit and bear it. And then you reevaluate come, say, round 7 or 8, and then see how you're going.
The 2 factors on the run home that won't be there, I really don't like for him. 1 is goal kicking, and 2 is the fact that there wasn't the steady halves there available for them between Mann being out, Reynolds being out. To me, he genuinely took a lot more usage and control. That's not going to be there round 1. So I worry for his stats because of those things. I think he could play just as well, but instead of an 85 average, produce a 70 average to start with. And that's great. He's still going to be an elite fullback. That's just going to be too much of a hit when you've got so many other good options. He might not, though, so I don't want it to sound like, to finish off on Walshy, I'm going to say to you, don't get him. Not at all. If you believe in him and you think that he's come into his prime and he's going to do what he was doing last year, or at least 90% of it, then 100% start with him, go with your gut, because he's a certain option. He's a certain captaincy option or vice captaincy on some of those weeks, and he's an elite option in SuperCoach. He was amazing last year. I think he'll be amazing again this year. But we've got to talk about another forward here, Carrigan. Now, 900, he's more than $200,000 less than Payne Haas. 23 games this year, had 0 tons. That's what kills him for me. And only 2 scores were 80 plus out of 23 games. This has always been the Carrigan problem. And he's a very solid, consistent player that will almost always get you in the 60s. But last year, even the 60s dropped. 61% of the time he went 60s. The year before, it was 73% of the time. So even that dropped off a bit. 5 average is right in line with what he's done for 3 years. He's been the same guy for 3 years. Mid-60s type of guy. I don't like it at all, except for the fact that if the new stats do change the way we think, he's one of those outlier guys that potentially has more value than 95% of super coaches. So that option becomes very viable. We just don't know, and it's on projections. So he does do a lot of third-man tackles. His tackles should go up a fair bit. He does go and engage the line and be that link man with the back line at times, or even other forwards occasionally. That's going to help him immensely as well, potentially. So I could see Carrigan, if he did the same thing, go from a 65 to an 80, if those stats come to fruition on the stat changes, which will be one of the biggest movers that we will see. So I guess it's a bit of a gamble, Wilfred, because like on one hand, if the stats do go up, you can bank on him to be the 65 guy because he has been for 3 years and it's the best part of his game. But if the stats don't really have much of an effect, or he has a tiny drop off in his, regular stats for the last 3 years, he's just so boring and not going to give you high enough scores.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right? He's not a tackle buster. He does have an offload, but he's very cautious with it, so you're not going to get too many out of him. And he will get the odd try assist because he does have a pass before the line. And if you've got a good backup, like when he passed to Haas and Haas scored, like that's nice. But it's
0 tries last year. 0.
Yeah, exactly. So look, he probably scores 1 try at some point. But I do wonder, like, is he going to be at lock again? Because he started the year at prop last year, if we remember, and that's why he's got the dual position. So that is one benefit to him. Look, I think he's cheap enough that you could just start with him and he's going to give you what you're paying for him. And there's the potential upside of if the stats fall in his favor and he does get that bump, that'll be nice. And plus, he's got the dual position. But, towards the back end of the year, whether he was injured or whether they just looked to manage his minutes a little bit, I think they were just trying to ramp him down a little bit so he could play more in the final series, is my guess. Because he definitely managed a lot more minutes early in the season, even over the origin period. Surprisingly, I thought he got, a little bit managed, but then straight after it, he was straight back into big, 60 to 70, even 80 minutes at some point. And then all of a sudden, for the last 4 rounds, he just dropped down to high 50s, low 60s for the rest of the year. So he will very much depend on game time. And I don't think you'll lose money signing with him. But there's a limit to where his ceiling's going to hit, low risk, pretty low reward too.
Well, his minutes were 65, and that was the lowest in a couple of years. 72 in 2024, 67 in 2023. So I do wonder whether he gets a little uptick there. And I also wonder whether there's any type of nice narrative storyline that could occur where someone could say, look, Payne Haas is leaving and Carrigan's taken it personally. It's his pack now. He's 28 years old. This is the time, and we see a career year from Carrigan. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but I'd rather just go elsewhere. Like I think a similar interesting one is Isaiah Yeo at the Panthers. Very similar type of guy, but can get a bit more attack and definitely engages the line a lot more if those stats come to fruition. So I would go him for a similar type of price point instead if you want to go that type of route of a player build.
Great.
And now we're off to Staggs, 638,000. You talk about guys that have career years. He's the most worrisome to back it up for me. I'd bank on the other guys ahead of him backing it up. But, geez, he had some good numbers. He went 65 points a game. That's the first time he's been 60 plus since 2021, where he went 62 points a game. And we thought he might have been a career gun going forward, but he just wasn't for 3 full seasons after that. Digging into the numbers, 6 out of 21 were below 50 the year before. it was 50 or below 12 out of 21 games. So basically, he's doubled his efficiency of being able to go above 50 points per game. That's quite a big deal because he had quite a few 20s and 30s in his game in prior years, which was scary. Career best base power at 44. 44 is not phenomenal, but it's certainly a lot better than what it was previously, about 10% better than what it has been previously. That's a big deal because that gave him that better floor to be able to get more above 50 than what he was. Equal best try scoring strike rate. Once before in his career, he did 50%. He scored 50% last year. Now, that's a pretty tough mark to be able to hit. 3 tons, hasn't done that since 2022. So the 2 seasons before, he was always good for that 1 ton where you knew he was going to have that monster game, but he never had another one. And last year he did it 3 times where he had 3 tons. So all of it shouts career year, obviously, but unlike guys like Walsh or Payne Haas, I'm much more cagey about Kotoni Staggs being able to back it up. And I think for the money, we do have so many other guys. Now, again, people will say, look, the stats are there that he could get some extra try assists as a centre. Yeah, he definitely can, but so can Herbie Farnworth, so can KL Iro, who's only 50-odd K more, so can Valentine Holmes. All these other options are just so much better, and some of them are only like 50K more expensive anyway. So I just don't see any room for him for centre wings for this season to start round 1.
Yeah, tend to agree. I think the only thing I would throw in there, so he only had 1 try contribution in 2024 and he had 10 in 2025. So if you convert some of those into a try assist instead because he's thrown the last pass, whatever, that could, offset some of the downsides you've highlighted. Yeah, by and large, I definitely think he's likely to, he probably gave us his best SuperCoach year. Like, I love Staggs, right? He is always busting his gut out for the Broncos. So a lot of his plays don't translate to SuperCoach in many ways, but at the same time, we're interested in his SuperCoach scoring. I just don't think he's ever going to be elite. I think he's a great draft pick, to be honest, but not for Classic is probably the word I'd lean for Staggs.
Yeah, I'd want him late, but he probably will go reasonably late in drafts, so I don't mind that shout at all. And actually, just to go back on Carrigan, I actually think Carrigan's a really good mid-round draft pick as well. I'd take him mid. I think that's really good for draft. Yeah, I think we're both in the same spot on Staggs. And it's not to say that he'll be bad, but you got to consider the draw as well. Like, that first 3 weeks, he could throw up 30s in some of those games. And you're better off just getting on a hotter centre wing. And if you really like Staggs for this year, go and grab him for that Titans matchup from round 5 and hope that 3 weeks he busts out. And he very well might. It might be a really good astute buy for you to target him then. Like a lot of these Broncos, I think that all of them are relevant at the right time. So I don't want to sound like I'm writing them all off, but it's the right time. And only a couple of them, I think it could be the right time for round 1. A controversial take. I got 2 guys here that people will love because they're Broncos fans or just NRL fans, which is fair, totally fair. Shibasaki was the fairy tale story of last year. He absolutely killed it. I did not expect him to even stay in first grade. So full credit to Shiba. Fully deserved it. His performances were great. He's done that being a lot better than what we thought he was going to be at 66 points per game. Now, I need to just remind everyone his years before were 29, 33, and 50 points per game, which was his best season. And all of those were 80-minute seasons, okay? So he, more than doubled his output from the 2 years prior. His average was in the low 30s. He doubled it and then some to have that season in 2025. For someone like him, you just can't take that. Likewise, for different reasons, 632,300 Adam Reynolds. I know a lot of people will say he'll be goal kicking. There's a lot of attack there, but there's just too many other halfback options, and we've got the options now to go cheap or to go a little bit more expensive. And I think that I've already said it. I've done Jerome Hughes a disservice because I kept talking about Hines and Cleary, and Hughes should have been talked about 100% in the same breath after going through the numbers and doing the Melbourne pod. I really liked Hughes quite a bit. There's just too many options that are above him that you just spend up for or pay a little bit extra for, or you go the double cheapy route even, So I just don't see either of those guys as options, but am I being tough on them, Wilfred?
No, I agree. I think Shibasaki, look, to be fair to him, I'd probably write off his previous years. I don't think he's the same player, right? He clearly something clicked. It was his last chance. He came out and absolutely thrived on the match. So I think he'll be good. Is he going to hit those heights again? Probably not, but
he needs another contract.
Yeah, I'm hoping he will. So obviously that's just more as a Broncos fan. you'd obviously will just want to wait and see. I think with Reynolds, like probably what you've highlighted there, Jerome Hughes is $2,000 cheaper, $1,300 cheaper than Reynolds. Like
Oh,
there's
I
no
thought he
chance.
was slightly more.
631.
How could you consider Reynolds?
Yeah, exactly right. So for that reason, against Panthers first round, like yeah, give me Jerome Hughes any day. I've got the vice captaincy on him right now.
No,
Yep.
totally fair. And look, it's Reynolds' swan song. He's retiring, so he might have a throwback year, but he's never been a guy that's going to be a 75 plus type of halfback option. Fallen Guns, interesting, and this is I'm going to rely on you here to tell me how they're going to do their rotations and stuff. Ben Hunt is only $482,400. Now, I've said Hunt is old, but everyone has value at the right price, Wilfred. Ben Hunt, 49 average, the worst he's done basically, since he's been starting in first grade regularly. And he only had a few games at 9. Now, those few games at 9 were not great, but only one was at 80 minutes. 41, 69, 33, 21. Poor scores, averaging around about 60 minutes a game. 7 and 6 he alternated between on the other games. Now, what's his role going to be? Because we've got guys like Smoothie move on. Corey Pakes is still there. Maybe he's going to be on the bench. Does Ben Hunt start? Does he get 60-plus minutes? Because at his price, there will be arguments there that in the right role, in the right scenario, he might be an option as a bit of a mid-range cheapie type. And there'll be big arguments in draft that you could grab him in draft and he could be quite valuable.
Yeah, look, I think realistically, I'm going to keep it pretty short. I just don't see him going to have a relevant option unless he's playing 80 minutes in the halves at some point. I see him probably in the rotation. It probably starts the year, but whether he's there end of year, I don't know. That will depend on how well he's holding up. Like, we talk about how old Reynolds is. Hunt's the same age, right? So he's definitely not going to be there for me. And because he's hooker only as well, which is just crazy to me. But yeah, you look at the names like 482, 400, like Jake Simpkin at 422, Reed Marnie 418. Like, there's no chance you're picking Ben Hunt above those guys.
Reece Robson almost the same price.
Exactly. So there's plenty of better options. Let's keep it simple. Let's move on.
All right. Well, I thought I might have been able to hook you into maybe he'll play 80 minutes, but you didn't take it. Okay. That's all right. Rising Gun Mem, 585,800. I'm not going to say perennially disappointing, but when he came into grade, I just had quite high expectations, and I was quite a big fan of Mem coming into grade, and he just sort of hasn't translated it quite yet. I think that in other circumstances at 5'8" Wilfred, from even the spotty form that we've seen, teams could take a punt on him if we knew the roles and we knew there wasn't all these halves floating around that could just replace him. But because of all that, it just makes it really hard to go for him. And I'll even say in draft, I find it really hard. He averaged 60 points a game. So on the numbers, you go, well, it's almost 10 points better than the 2 years prior averages. And he's come to sort of be a better player now. He only played the 10 games though. So it was a pretty small sample size and was brought up a lot by a massive 128 game where he got his first game back in round 11, so there's a lot of caveats there. Under the right circumstances, I could see Mem flourishing, hitting his mid-20s and going really well. But under the current Broncos circumstances for this year, even in draft, he looks like a bit of a stay away.
I think I don't know what it was, but when he first came into grade, he definitely ran the ball a lot more. And that just dropped off as I don't know if maybe he's dealing with injuries or something like that, or maybe just hadn't quite got it together. So I'd really need to see him get those run numbers up, and before I'd even really want to think about it. Because I do remember when he first started as a rookie, he was hitting around 35 to 40 in base and base attack, which is pretty good for a half. Not quite Dylan Brown type numbers, better than a lot of the other halves out there. But I think the last few years he's 25 to 30, which that's definitely not acceptable. Too much reliance on attacking stats. But like I said, I think it's a big year for him. He needs to step up to, prove that he's obviously been worth the Broncos sticking with him. Yeah. If he can step up, I do think it's going to make a difference to him and actually bring him more into SuperCoach considerations. But I'm happy to wait and see. Definitely won't be starting with Mam anywhere.
And as far as big balls pods go, huge pods could be the wingers. So obviously we know that the wingers for the Broncos are doing pretty well at the moment if their attack stays up. Karapani and Mariner, we're pretty set on those guys being the wings, are we?
I believe so. I haven't heard otherwise at this stage.
So I mean, Mariners in the 400s. Karapani actually showed some really good stuff last year. He was a good cheapie that then turned into a guy that you could play quite a bit. 64 average. He was a bit of a revelation. It's hard because both those wingers could project to score a lot of tries and actually be guys that aren't looked at all. So I could see it happening. But could you consider either of them in, that sort of 400 to 500s type range?
These guys would not be ones I'd pick for round one. I think Walsh, you could make the argument to start with, like, what we talked about, but these are round 4-5 flyers that you're probably taking a punt on once that draw eases up. So that'd be how and then that gives you the first couple of rounds to see their work rate and involvement and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd keep it simple. I probably wouldn't be starting with them in round one for sure.
Now we're going to move on to the mids and the cheapies. Before we do, though, and there's some really interesting ones, so stick around, but I do need to mention the great sponsor of the All-Stars podcast in oneworldcourier.com.au. Go to oneworldcourier.com.au today. You can sign up for a free account, and when it says, where did you hear about us, put All-Stars podcast, and they will take great care of you. But they are basically a company that can do any of your shipping or freight needs, whether your business does a lot of that or any of it, or whether you own a business in particular, they're great to partner with. But their website, you go to it, you sign in, and then you can compare the market on anything that you need to send, whether it's pallets or envelopes or whatever. They'll show you all the different options and carriers you can choose from. You choose the carrier, and then they sort it all out for you. Simple as, and a great service. So jump on oneworldcourier.com.au today. Great sponsors and supporters of the NRL Allstars podcast. Wilfred, mids and cheapies. Piakura, 305,000. He's too cheap to just write off. I know he's really, really been annoying for a couple of years because me and you, the last 2 years, me and you have been on him. We've been like, start with Piakura because he's so cheap and he's going to have a better role. He's not going to be a 42 or a 41 last 2 years before last season. He's going to be a 60-pluser, maybe a 55 floor, 15 points of value, maybe 20 points. How could you not own him? This has been Wilfred the last 2 years straight. He didn't go 42 or 41 last season. He went 31. And it is still his starting role again, apparently, on that edge. What in the world do you do at around 300k? It's so cheap. But, oh boy.
It kills me because I still love his skill set, right? Like, I do think he's a better player than what he puts out on. Like, he does stuff that I just think a lot of edge back rowers can't do. But he's just so frustrating because he just, maybe it's because of youth or whatever, like he loves to try to put a hit on, right? And act like a big tough guy and gets it wrong half the time. Either knocks himself out or he gets himself sent off or sin bin. Like, if he could like he does put some good hits on, like I will give him that. But it's just, not quite the way I like to see it happen. So, I mean, if he starts, he's cheap enough, I'll probably end up in my team again. But it's not full of confidence. It erodes every season that he can't deliver. But you look at his scores, right? He's got games where he'll just, if he plays a full 80, he'll probably plod to a 40. If he's having a good game, he'll score 50 or so. But then every game, like I watch a couple of runs, he's just, one hand holding his ankle from a line break into a try. Because he's fast. Like he'll get away. And if he gets away from them, he usually gets to score. It's just, and he's got a pass on him that a lot of back rows don't. I'll stop talking about Piakura. Like, he's cheap enough that he'll probably, depending on team makeup, he may end up in my team just because I don't have the cheapies elsewhere. But I don't love it, to be honest. I don't love it.
0.6 ppm is not good, but I tell you, he had three 80-minute games last year, and he went 81, 62, and 52. Very small sample size, but those 3 games he scored very well in where he played 80 minutes. I also cast everyone's mind back to round 1. You're all excited for kickoff, watching the game in Las Vegas, and 1 minute in, he's gone. Minus 11 points for all you super coaches that listen to the All-Stars podcast and took Wilfred and mine on their advice to have him. So, yes, it's a very tough one, but his projections for 80 minutes still say he's going to make money and he's very cheap. So he has to be an option. And he has the ability to improve because, like you said, he does have that skill set, but we need to see it now. Look, it's interesting because we mentioned earlier in the podcast, Kobe Hetherington is gone. That means that there's going to be a gap there. And a guy I didn't initially have on our run sheet that I forgot about was Jensen, who now projects as a starter. And at 390,700, he's quite cheap for a front rower. Hetherington is gone, so he should have some minutes and he should start. Now, normally he's a bit of a meat and potatoes guy. Only averaged 40 points last year, but in 2024, when he was starting, and averaging 52 minutes, he gave you 53 points. So it's all about the minutes. Like he may very well play 53, 54 minutes. And if he does that, he should give you 53, 54 points. He's a lock for a 1 ppm. So does that make him a consideration, albeit a not very sexy one?
I just think like similar to Carrigan, right? It's just low upside. I think, probably a better draft pick, if anything. Like I just don't see the point in the classic pick, because I think you're going to find better options that are cheaper who probably have much more growth potential, like your Pasekas and guys like that. Just I think are probably better hunts than Corey Jensen. So while the minutes are there, I just don't see Jensen being the one that demands to be able to take the big minute roll on. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that if he works out for you, it's still probably going to be 2 or 3 months before you get the full dividends of the payout, and that's probably too long in SuperCoach, unless you get lucky and he gets an early try or something, which
Jensen's
is
scoring a
unlikely.
try?
Well, people win the lottery every week. Now, we have Piakura to talk about, and I have him in my side at the moment. I'm expecting him to step up and improve again, but in saying that, it's pretty hard not to have him, because you need some guys that are going to be super cheap in your front row forward. 235,600. He looks a lot more sexier than Royce Hunt does. Now, he obviously only played 2 games last year, scored 19 points a game, and the year before he played 8 and scored 29. So, I mean, look, 29 points in 21 minutes off a good sample size. He only played 3, not 8, sorry. It's not a good sample size. It's only 3, Barnesy. So we don't really know what he'll do, but I do like the look of him, and they are going to need him in the middle now. Like I said, with Hetherington gone, Jensen sort of stepping in, but being sort of more of a role player. I'm expecting a step-up season from Piakura, a bit of a career year so far in his young career. Has consistently had well over a 1 ppm. So if he can maintain that and those minutes go to like 35, he's going to make good cash, priced at 235k. So I have him in my side now, pegged for like that 35-minute type of role. Where are you at on Piakura?
Probably less optimistic. I just don't think he's going to have that many minutes.
Okay.
I don't think he's built to be that, right? Like the kid is 205 centimeters tall, like 120 something kilograms. Like he is a big boy. I just don't see him to have the motor to get to that many minutes. Maybe eventually, but he's still only 21, right? So he's still quite young. I just think he's still growing. Like that's the crazy thing. Yeah, I think he's taller than he was last year again. I think he already dethroned Asafa Solomona as the tallest guy in the NRL. So I think he's even taller now. He's just a big boy. I think he's still figuring out his body. He seems to get hurt a lot, and that's unfortunate. So look, he'll probably be there because we need cheapies at the front row. But to me, I just think I think he'll be a slow burn. The one thing I will say is he's probably like Willison when he was a rookie. I was like, he's going to be a guy who will find a try line at some point, and then that's what you want because he'll spike. Because the guy, from the 10-meter line, he'll just stretch out his arm and score, right? That he's tall. And then I think we saw him score a try in one of the trials where he did literally just that. Got the ball from 10 meters out, took 2 steps and just dived under someone and just stuck his arm out and scored the try. Like it was crazy that he could reach it, but that's, what happens.
Well, in his defense too, though, like I think with other guys, like you can say, oh, there's these other options around him. There isn't really a lot of front row forward options at 235k to plug in there and just sort of leave. And some people are even nothing in that spot with the dual, which is pretty common. And you could do that. But, for me, I've got him in because I want that 4th front row forward to be 35k. I want him to be a budget price point. So, like you said, he can get lucky. But even if he gets 5, even 10 minutes a game less, he's still going to burn through and make you the money. So I quite like it. You did mention another guy, though, that we're going to finish on. Xavier Willison is one of my favourite young front rowers in the competition. Really like him. I have pretty much since he came into grade. So all you Broncos haters, just listen to all this positive stuff, or saying I'm a Bronco hater, I should say, because, the fans get rolled up north. I love Willison, guys. So he's got 46 and 47 the last 2 years. I still think he's got so much untapped potential. One of the disappointing things is his PPM went down quite a bit. So in 2024, 38 minutes a game, he produced 46, but then he went 45 minutes a game and only produced 47 points. He's sub 500k. It's an awkward price point, but he's the type of guy that can go on a bit of a run and also definitely step up. I'm expecting that from him this year, but it's all very much narrative and feel. The minutes may very well not be there that are going to be a hell of a lot better, because 45 minutes a game was really good for him last year.
I do just want to point out some of that. The reason his PPM drop is he spent time on the edge. So I think when he stays purely in the middle, I think he's going to keep that PPM up there. So that's what I'll blame it on. I'm not sure it's exactly 100% tied to it, but I do think that there's a few games in the middle of the season, like he scored 22 and 42 minutes, but that was playing on the edge, right? So yeah, he does also have some concussion issues, surprisingly. When I think back, I think he's actually he's missed time for HIAs and actually, had games ended early because of concussion. So just a little bit of concern there. I just think he's unfortunately an awkward price. Like if an injury happens to Haas or Carrigan, then Willison I'd be much more interested in, but he's just really awkward at his price to bank on him being, taking a big uptick. But you talked about the Hetherington departure. Like if there is going to be minutes opened up, I really do hope they go to Willison, just as a Broncos fan.
With the current predicted bench makeup, I mean, they've got Corey Pakes, Ben Tulty, Willison and Piakura on the bench. Like, to me, I would be giving Willison and Piakura the bulk of those minutes. And
Tulty was a gun. What are you talking about?
He's a solid player, but he's not these young guys with potential like Piakura and Willison. Like, I don't know. It's a 3-forward bench, and they're gonna have to give minutes. And by the way, Piakura doesn't play 80 minutes. He finds ways not to. So who on that bench, if they go with it, goes on the edge? They tried Willison on the edge at times last year. So maybe he plays a combo of edge plus middle, which, all of a sudden I've got Isaiah Papali'i vibes circa Parramatta days,
Yep. Yeah, very true. Very true. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I do think
he's too expensive. That's what it comes down to.
That's just it. It's like if he was $350 like Piakura price, then a lot more interested, but just a little bit awkwardly priced to take that punt.
Yep, totally fair. Well, look, we've run overtime once again because Wilfred loves talking about the Broncos and I love indulging him so I don't get hate mail from Broncos fans. So we will finish up the podcast there, but Wilfred, thank you very much for jumping on. Great to get you over, and like we said, we'll get you on some regular ones in the All-Stars podcast this year.
I'll do my best. Like I said, no promises because it is stupidly busy, but yeah, like I said, anytime I can come on, I'm always happy to come and have a chat with you. Always enjoy talking footy and SuperCoach and butting heads on how much better the Broncos are from the Roosters, right?
Well, last year you got me, that's for sure. Everyone tuning in, you can follow and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. Make sure you jump on there and follow us and subscribe to get the up-to-date episodes, and also jump on social media, particularly Twitter, which I keep up to date the most. Jump on there and follow us there. But I hope you're enjoying the preseason team previews. We're going to have a few more this week coming out. Until then, enjoy tinkering with your sides, and I can't wait to jump back on and talk footy again with everyone real soon.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.